Starting lineup, uniforms, and apparel present the WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. Whoa, hey, what's up, everybody? Andrew Rogers here, the host, of course, WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. How's everybody doing? It's good to be back with you. Of course, the big addition that you'll notice off the hop here is the partnership with Starting Lineup, Uniforms and Apparel. That's run by Mitch Scott. It's just fantastic, and we're really happy to have him on board with us. His work is unbelievable. He does some really good customization work, and his stuff is really awesome. And he's been nothing short of spectacular since we started talking, and I think this is going to be really good for both of us. So it's great to have him on board. It's great to have him part of this whole thing, and we are really happy to have him and the Starting Lineup, Uniforms, and Apparel. Check out all their social media. Make sure to give them a follow, and make sure to check their stuff out. If there's anything that sparks your interest, he's the guy to go to, and yeah, you won't be disappointed for sure. It's great to be back once again for another episode of this podcast. The next thing I want to say really, really quickly to you guys is how happy I am that this is going well so far. Of course, we've only done the 2 episodes, and they've been very successful, as it would appear. The social media followings have been great, and the viewership of these podcasts have been nothing short of spectacular. I can't honestly put it into words, how happy it makes me to see that these videos are getting the kind of viewership that they're getting, and that you guys seem to be enjoying them. So I'm very, very happy about that. Of course, last week's guest was Holden Lancic from the C4 Centenaires. Wonderful interview with him. He's just a fantastic guy, really knows the game, and he's a really good talent in the game, and in the game of hockey and in this league. He's just, like I say, a spectacular guy all around, and it was great to have him on here last week. And, it's really interesting, though, when you talk to the players and you get their kind of perspective on things, they can really make for some interesting tales and some stories, and you can just tell, like, the real passion and emotion that some of these guys carry with them, and that's huge. It speaks on a lot of levels. So we look forward to having more of that on this podcast, and not only do we want to talk to the players, but we also want to talk to coaches and management, because they always got something interesting to say for sure. So, and that leads us into today's guest. He's kind of a big deal, at least he was to me personally for last season, as I was able to follow his team around all season long over the course of 29 games. And he is one of the co-head coaches of the Minto 81s, the 81s who started out slow last year, but really turned it on in the second half, and were going to make a Cinderella-type run in the playoffs before everything was suspended eventually due to COVID. His name is Ryan Fisk, and he is our guest on this week's episode of the WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. We are pleased to be joined here on the podcast by the co-head coach of the Minto 81s. His name is Ryan Fisk. Ryan, welcome to the podcast, man. We're happy to have you.
Thanks, buddy. Good to talk to you again.
You bet. Like I said, unbelievable run you guys had last year. It was really a roller coaster season, and I was happy to be along with it. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, a lot of highs, a lot of lows. A couple questions I want to ask you off the hop that were sent in to me, and then we'll get into the season in a second. The first question, though, that I have, there's just a couple fire questions here. FullSend18 on Instagram asked me, he asked, how long have you been coaching? Just in general, maybe in the league? Either or.
I think I was about 13 or 14 years played, and so I guess I've been kind of help with the team now, so I don't know, probably the last 8 years. Okay,
yeah, that's a good amount of time.
Yeah.
Sean Cohen 80 on Twitter. He wants to know if you're faster with the new haircut. I don't know if you could put into context what that means, but it sounds like a funny question nonetheless.
Yeah, Cowboy, yeah, I talked to him, I saw that. So, yeah, it was obviously the hair, well, what hair I had left. was getting long, and then one day we were kind of sitting around. My son needed a haircut, so we got the clippers out, and then I thought, well, I trust my wife to trim mine up, and I heard an oops, ooh, and I'm like, oh yeah, and of course all my buddies have said, it was time to let go, so off it came. So yeah, off it came. So sure, I found it's a lot more work having a shaved head than having a bit of hair, because you're constantly having to groom now. So
sure. Yeah, I've always been more towards the shorter hair as well. Buzz cuts are kind of a personal favorite of mine too, so I get where you're coming from, man. I get it.
Yeah, thanks, Cowboy.
Yeah, and then the last writing question I got is from Bradley Craven. He asked about he wanted to know if there is any news on regulations coming down from Hockey Canada, in terms of what's happening, in terms of the pandemic, for the training staff to be concerned about. I don't know if you've heard about anything that you might be able to shed some light on for us.
I haven't heard anything. There hasn't been a lot of talk that I've heard, towards the upcoming hockey season. I'm sure there is going to be a lot of guidelines that if things do get going, teams are going to have to follow. So yeah, at this point, no, I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Yeah, I think he was just curious if you had, and if you were able to shed any light. But that is the big question, right? Is about what's going to happen. Like like you said, a lot of uncertainty as opposed to this upcoming season. What seems to be the general tone? Is it one of fear? Is it one of is it just basic unknown at this point?
Yeah, like I kind of take it as an unknown. I think from watching the news, it's like everyone, you watch the news, you're kind of, our province is seeing what other provinces are doing. The NHL's, you read about what they're trying to do, and obviously we're way down the list on getting going, but I don't think anyone really knows. I think you just have to kind of anticipate things are going to get better, and then hopefully that you're prepared if you do start, that you're ready to start.
Yeah. I think the big thing, like at least what I'm taking away from this, is the financial impact that it's going to have on the 14 teams, at least that are in the league now, that are ready to go, I guess, for the next season. And the financial part about having local businesses be the big sponsors for these teams. Like obviously there are some that stand in the upper tier of teams that can survive with strong sponsorships, and then there are teams that kind of struggle when it comes to that and comes to the financial backing. Like that, I think that's the big thing. Am I right?
Oh, I agree 100%. I think, you hear things about playing in empty arenas, stuff like that. Well, as well as I do, like if you don't have the big sponsors behind you, and you're relying on hopefully some fans to come and help pay your bills throughout the season. Well, if teams don't have that, and then if sponsors, maybe this upcoming season have been, they've been hurt by the pandemic. Maybe their money for sponsor isn't there this year. So there's a lot of factors that could come into play, before the season starts, for sure, for a lot of teams.
Yeah, and the pandemic's hurting everybody, and it would be a real shame at this point if the upcoming season was to be hindered at all by that. So definitely we're all keeping our fingers crossed. So let's talk about this past season. So I want to get into some questions about that, because I got a lot of them. First thing I want to start at the beginning. Like you just had training camp, and it was early on in the season. Like, what were your expectations going into the season, given that you guys had a first-round playoff exit last year, like the year prior, against Saugeen Shores? You guys go out in 5 games. What was the expectation coming into the season, around the time that training camp and the team was starting to come together? What were your expectations for the team?
Well, you always have to set goals, right? So I know the goal after last year, I know the consensus from coaching staff and from a lot of the guys was, our goal, right off the gate, was we got into the A side, first round playoffs, competed, and then, after that, Port Elgin and Saugeen had a pretty good team, and after that, guys, next year, the guys want, let's get to the second round. Yeah. We want to get to the second round of playoffs.
Right.
So that's kind of how it started.
Now,
but yeah, that was our goal to start the year, and we got that. We succeeded with that.
Right. So take me back then. so you guys started slow. I mean, everybody in the league took notice of that. However many games, 7, 8 games in, and you guys only have 3 points and you're sitting 13 out of 14 teams. What was the morale like at that point? Was it just that as low as you would think that it sounds?
It was frustrating. It was frustrating because you knew we were better than we were showing. Now, understand you were at some of the games too, and not all of them. There was a lot of games that was just, bad mistakes here and there, bounce here and there, and, it was a loss. Right. Bounce here and there, goes the other way, it's a win. So
right.
But for the most part, the guys, were frustrated, but they never really, let it bother them. They just kind of still showed up, still had fun, and, they just seemed to, to push through it. So.
Right. Well, was there like a specific point in that between the time that you guys got off to the slow start and then really started to turn it on there for the second half and into the playoffs, obviously, is if we look at the season in two different parts, is there a specific moment that you can kind of pinpoint as the turning point, if you will?
I don't know if I don't know. Like I said, there was, some personnel changes, Zach Graham coming back to play helped a lot. Yeah. He helped, I felt, right off the hop, bring a veteran player to the league. High skilled, one of the top players in the league.
Right.
He fit in well, you'd fit in well with the guys that were already there. Like I said, it was just about, I think, I don't know, guys finding their confidence.
Right.
If that makes sense to you, like guys just seem to get some confidence. And I feel it was there was a game against Tavistock. I think we lost in overtime, and from that game on, it seemed to be we started playing with more confidence. And I don't know if there's one specific thing, but I know Zach coming in was a big factor. It gave us a little bit more depth up the middle, which we all know if you've got some good depth up the middle, that's a big building block for success. So,
yeah,
defense, our forwards started to buy into the systems that we knew we had to play with the team we had. We weren't hanging our defense and goaltenders out to dry as much. There's a lot of things that I think just started to click.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, again, having been there and seen the product firsthand, the obvious addition of Zach Graham was huge for you guys as it really did mold the whole team together, I thought. And he really brought this winning attitude that kind of trickled down to all the rest of the guys and gave them that kind of confidence that they needed to play with that certain level, knowing that they could go in there and win every night. I do remember that Tavistock game where you guys battled and ended up eventually losing. I think it was in the shootout. I recall that game. It was in Palmerston. Again, very good Tavistock team, and you guys, it was a great game back and forth. And obviously, you had to come out short, but at least you get the point. Is a huge bonus. Absolutely. You talk about Zach Graham. Talk about that line. Talk about your top line, and just was it as in my experience, I've never seen a more dominant line from 1 through 3. Like how crucial and I guess how much did you rely upon that to as a way to say, okay, this season was huge and they were a huge part of that success.
Yeah, I think for sure there was Zach was a big, like I said, a big part of that. I think what happened with that line, if you were to start the year and say, hey, you were going to have Zach Line playing with Wade Peffer and Adam Kwalik, you would have thought most of us were nuts. So Wade, moving from the back end up to play wing,
right? Because
we had more defensemen, than forwards most nights.
Right.
So, and I don't know. It just seemed to, Zach being a playmaker, Adam being a shooter, a goal scorer. So it just seemed to work. Wade works hard. It just seemed to click. And then, like I said, it was, it also took, I think it helped a lot. You were asking a lot, like Tommy Hoogers, another top centerman in the league. It just gave more support to our guys that were already there.
Yeah.
And I think, took the burden off some guys. I think start of the year we were a little lean, and some guys, maybe were trying to do too much and felt they had to be the guy to put the puck in the net, and maybe that hurt them.
Right.
Their game. It's just I don't know.
That's fair. Okay, so you guys, you make the playoffs. You get in there on an unbelievable second half run. You guys end up finishing 7th, and you draw Shelburne in the first round. What was the mindset going in to that series, and were they the opponent that you guys were hoping to draw going into the postseason?
Well, when you start, you get down near the end of the year, the way the season kind of started to play out, it was pretty tight,
Oh yeah.
So you kind of couldn't pick who you were gonna, you didn't know who you were really gonna play. So we were kind of, anticipating, that it was going to be Ripley. Everyone thought it was going to be Ripley, and then,
right.
Know what the upset against Durham,
right.
Then, you're kind of, our fate was in our own hands, how we finished. So
yeah.
Once it looked like Shelburne, but then, we never really looked or thought of Shelburne until it was Shelburne. And
right.
then all of a sudden you're like, okay, now we got to get focused to play Shelburne, who, let's face it, they had a terrific season.
They did.
Hard-working team. You knew, what you were going to get playing against them because of playing them throughout the regular season. They work hard. They
right.
No quit on that team. Great goaltending. So, yeah.
Do you guys feel, though, that, so that series, it had a little bit of everything. You guys get the eventual win in a double overtime Game 6. As a coach in that situation where you guys win such a tightly contested game as a series clincher, it's probably one of the best games I've ever seen. What's it like to be a coach in that situation?
Well, it's funny. The way that game played out, everyone was playing well. There wasn't a lot, that we had to say or do. Everyone was, doing what they were supposed to be doing. It was more or less just trying to, keep the lines rolling, stuff like that. But it was one of those games, we seemed to kind of carry most of the play at times. Their goaltender, like I said, made I don't know how many big saves for them. And as a coach, you go back to as a player, when the ice is tilted to that end for so long, you're just waiting for that shin pad, from a point shot, they come down and right. They get, that's what we were talking about. We were waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
Because that just seems to be the way those games shake out. But
right.
After it was funny, because Brady Anderson, before we went up to that second overtime, he told me, and I quote this, he said, "Wait till you see my celebration."
Uh-huh.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he said he was going to get her, and he did. So, yeah, no.
It was
good. I was happy for the guys,
No, absolutely. That's a little Mark Messier, guaranteeing that he's going to get it and then going out and doing it. That's awesome. So you guys get the huge series win, 6 games against a really tough Shelburne team, as you said. Do you find that series was huge for you guys going into going in against the top team in Ripley? Did you feel like you guys built a lot from that series to take into the next one?
Yeah, I think it gave, like I said, it gave the guys confidence. Like I said, they got the win. They got to the second round.
Right.
But I think it helped. But I also think we were going into the first game. If you remember, we came in, I think, a little too cocky.
Right.
And we weren't ready.
Yeah.
So, Shelburne and Ripley, 2 totally different teams.
Right.
With, so like I said, I kind of anticipated talking to the other coaches and some of the guys that, the first weekend against Ripley, you obviously like to get a split. That didn't happen, but I think you learn a lot from, and you have to be able to adjust. And that's what I mean. I think our guys, from the way our season went, were able to, not quit, They seem to find a way to, and like I said, make the adjustments.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys with a lot of, they're very competitive.
Right.
And, so like I said, it was, I don't know.
Would it be fair to say, though, that there was any sort of sense of potentially being down and defeated after losing the first 2, or was the expectation always that you guys would be able to battle back?
Actually, game 2, I thought after game 2, I was quite confident. I knew we could, we all know, and I knew that we were able to play with Ripley.
Right.
But it's like the old saying, you got to start somewhere to get some confidence that you can beat them, that you can beat them. And like I said, that game 2, I thought we played one of our best games.
Yeah.
Of the 4, and they still, they came out with, I think it was a 4-3 win, but
yeah,
a couple breaks. I think it was Gatlin played net for them. He made
yeah,
a couple big saves for them in that game that could have really changed the outcome of that game. And like I said to the guys after, and they've all played. Like I said, you got the guys that played in Liftsville, the guys that played in down with Kitchener. They've all been through playoffs. A lot of our guys have all been through the playoffs.
Right.
So they knew, you get that third game 3, you're back in it. And that's what I mean. We went to their barn, quite short on the back end. We had a lot of guys stepping in, playing, different roles that maybe they weren't asked to play in regular season. And
right.
That's one good thing with this team, this group of guys, no matter who it was, it was, I have no problem. I'll do what I can.
Right. Play
defense tonight, play forward tonight, fourth line, third line. Guys were able to plug holes, and like I said, it was a lot of fun. Like it was to play. And
well, it was a lot of fun for me to be a part of it. I'll say this, to watch each and every game and watch you guys battle and watch you guys go through everything that you did go through was quite impressive to watch on a nightly basis for sure. So you guys win the next 2 in that series. Do you would you honestly personally say that you guys thought that you guys were of the morale and of the opinion that you guys were going to take that series?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I would not have been. I anticipated it going 7. I figured it could have, after tying it up 2-2, the way we were playing, the way our guys, the confidence that we had, some guys that were away that were going to be back. We would have had some personnel that were away that so we would have had a stronger lineup. But
right.
Like I said, it would have been. It wouldn't have surprised me if I would not have been surprised if we ended up winning that series.
Yeah.
Not taking anything away from Ripley, but I just thought that our guys they proved to themselves they could beat them, and they were hungry to beat them. So, both goaltenders were playing well. So it was very disappointing that we never got to see what would have happened or could have happened.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, in such a physically, emotionally charged series that it was, to have it basically end without a conclusion is extremely disappointing. I can't imagine what that would have been like to be in that position. Obviously, from my position, it was even as disappointing as you could think, and then to be in your guys' position to have that happen, I can't imagine what level that would be at. It'd be at a whole nother level entirely. Ryan, when you look at the season as a whole, though, what's your overall take on it? Or is it one of satisfaction? Is it one of disappointment? What's the takeaway?
Obviously, the disappointment comes not getting to finish to see what could have happened. But not only for that, the hockey side, but there's a lot of, as well as I do, there's behind the scenes executive stuff like that. All the teams left in the playoffs, let's face it, the farther or the more gates you get in the playoffs, the easier it is and to pay bills at the end of the year. And,
sure.
But from the hockey side of it, I think we were definitely satisfied to get to where we were.
Right.
It was a success that way, the way the season started to the way it ended. To be tied 2-2, with Ripley, like I said, the way the season started, yes, but disappointed that we never obviously got to see what could have been. So there you go. Fair
enough. I want to ask you a couple questions just about some of your guys. I want to get your takes on some of the players. Talk about Adam Kowalik. How impressed were you by his impressive season?
Well, Adam just he continued from where he left off last year. I think last year, and I do think with a lot of guys coming out of Junior C, Junior B into the senior league, let's face it, the league's changed over the years, so it's a more skating skilled, fast league. So I do think it takes some guys a little bit to figure out what the league's all about. But Adam seemed to, Adam's Adam,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the night, Adam's usually got you, a goal or couple, or, he's always got points for you.
Right.
Yeah, he's a quiet leader. Doesn't say a word, just goes about his business game in and game out.
Right. Talk about Kyle Ellis on the back end. How impressed were you by his season?
Ellie, Ellie's Ellie. Ellie, he's a good leader in the room. There again, doesn't get too worked up during a game. Usually keeps it fairly light on the bench, which I think is important in senior. Let's face it, these guys have all been screamed, hollered at for all through junior, and to come to play senior, like, let's face it, not a lot of the guys have to come play senior hockey. They're playing because they want to play competitive hockey still. So
yeah.
I think you still have to, and Kyle's that guy, like, he wants to make sure that we're coming to the rink, it's fun, because that makes you want to come.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how, but yeah.
Kyle. Yeah, no, he's a good dude for sure, and a heck of a defenseman. Talk about how, actually, let's go to one of the points in the season there where you guys brought in a player from Elora and Sean Lantz. How nice was it to have him come into the fold for that playoff run?
Lantz, that was huge. It helped there again. He was obviously a player when we came back in the league that we had talked to, and would have loved him to have been aboard at that time, but I understand lives closer to Laura, wanted to play there. But yeah, Lonty, obviously proven winner in Mount Forest, captain, competitor, great on the power play. That was a huge lift for us. And
I guess the last one I want to ask you about is your goaltending duo, Ben Nelson and Mark Williams. It was a really, really nice 1A, 1B type situation that you guys had from the regular season right through the playoffs. Talk about their impact for you guys for the season.
Yeah, well, like I said, Mark and Ben both had great junior careers, and it's just like we've talked before, in this league, it's tough to find that goaltender that wants to split the crease with another top goaltender with, and that's, they seem to feed off each other, push each other, which is great for our guys. You can work all year, and if you don't have, a quality 1A, 1B, if someone gets hurt, has an off night, you don't have that guy that can just, come in and plug the hole and keep things rolling.
Right.
And that's where they seem to do a good job with each other, very supportive, great guys in the room. So that's a huge asset.
Right. So I guess then I want to know, like, what are you thinking? What are you hoping for in terms of next season, if and when that happens? What's the hope? What's the goal?
Well, that's the thing. Like, the way the league is now, with the way the rules are set up with your player availability and how they set it up, I think going into each season now, it gives a lot of teams, hope that you're going to compete, which we saw this year.
Yeah.
So I think next year our goal is, you want to try to aim at finishing in the top four. Like I said, we haven't really got a lot, because we haven't got a lot of information given to us of what the plan is for the upcoming season. So like I said, we've just kind of been reaching out to some of the guys, seeing who's, making sure who's wanting to come back and play, who's not coming back.
Yep.
Some guys that, and then we'll start talking to some of the guys that have graduated, moved on from junior, and kind of go from there.
I understand. Ryan, we've talked about a lot here, and we've been talking about some great things about the course of the season past and this upcoming season. Is there anything else that you kind of want to discuss at this point, or are you good?
Oh, I think, big hats off to you. I've told you numerous times, this league has been, probably in the last 10 years, has grown leaps and bounds. And you saw it this year, and I think you've done a terrific job. And this league needs to have the exposure. It should have more exposure. I think once people come to realize the talent that's in this league now, and I think you've helped bring that. So hopefully that continues. So, we appreciate that from, the 81 side of things. And I'm sure a lot of other teams in the league do as well.
I appreciate you saying that. That definitely means a lot to me, and I appreciate everything that you guys did for me this past season. I can't say that enough. I mean, it was an unbelievable experience for me from a hockey side in terms of from start of the season to the finish. Obviously, it wasn't the way we had hoped it ended up, but it was really a one-of-a-kind experience, and you guys were so incredibly great, so incredibly welcoming to me, and you basically gave me every opportunity to be successful, and I can't tell you how thankful I am for that. And again, I think we both shared that common interest about wanting to grow this league and see it succeed and see it become have all this exposure that the league so desperately needs, because these players, this talent, they deserve all the exposure and then some, and that's really just my goal at the end of the day, is to make sure they get that.
Well, for sure, and that's what I mean. Like, this league it was always classified, like I've said to you before, as a working man's family type league.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not just myself. Like, there's like Scott, Todd, and Abe, and Brad. There's all the people that help with the other stuff. You got Dan Hill. I know my father's been involved for years. And it's the people like that help keep the teams going, and that's the thing. And I think with more exposure, like you're doing, I'm hoping that it helps get more people involved with their local team to help, because I know that the executives in most teams they struggle to find people. So I think if we can, like, doing what you're doing, get more people out, brand the league, hopefully in the right direction. And I think that'll help a lot. And that's going to be a good thing.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole goal of this, and that's the goal of the podcast, is to try and get people aware of this league and how good it is, to get hopefully some butts in the seats. And like as well as I do, it's a young man's game now, and we live in the world of social media, and the league needs to rejuvenate in that sense. I'm a big believer in that, and I think this podcast goes a long way. And it's having guests like Holden Lancic last week, and having guests like yourself to just be able to add a whole other layer to this league, and be able to share with people how wonderful it is, and give everybody that perspective and that understanding of it. So, like I say, we really appreciate you coming on here and telling us a little bit about your side of how the season played out, and we really appreciate you having you on here, Ryan. Thank you very much for coming on here today.
All right, thanks for having me, Andrew.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. I want to thank again Ryan Fisk for joining us on this week's episode of the podcast, the WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast. This is episode 3 of many, hopefully. I don't have a guest lined up and confirmed for our next episode of the podcast. If you want to be on and you want to come on and share your hockey experience, you want to talk hockey, you want to talk about your team, you want to talk about your experience from this past season, anybody and anyone I'm willing to have on here. I'd love to be able to chat with you. Reach out to me if you'd like to be a guest. Otherwise, I'll be in contact. I got a couple people in mind that I wouldn't mind having on here in the next episode or two, and we'll make sure to get you on and make sure to have you on board and get your take. And really, I mean, this podcast is for everybody, because everybody's got a story and everybody's got something to say about what's going on, and to talk about their senior A hockey experience. And it's just really interesting what people have to say. But again, we thank Ryan for coming on. It really is interesting to see what's going to happen, and we're a lot of uncertainty is about next year, but hopefully there's some resolution soon, and make sure to follow along with my social medias. I'll try and update anybody on league happenings as soon as I find out about them. Hopefully this season I'll be a lot more in tune with what's going on in terms of the executive side of it and the league operations. So I'll be able to fill in everybody. I just want to be able to provide a decent social media so that people can get updates as soon as they become available, and that there's just an outlet for them to be able to do so. So hopefully I can do that for everybody. So I want to thank Ryan, my guest, once again for being on. I want to thank Mitch Scott of Starting Lineup Uniforms and Apparel for coming on board. And I want to thank you guys all for watching. We had 200 plus viewership in each one of the first two episodes, and I'm expecting more in this week's episode. So I'm Andrew Rogers, the host of the WOA Senior AA Men's Hockey League podcast, saying take care, and thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.